Ajit Agarkar. I don't know if Rahul Dravid's going to call you up to have that tough conversation with Virat Kohli that Tom's just alluded to. So maybe that is what Rohit and Rahul need to do.
Yeah, fortunately Rahul's there, so it's a good thing.
So what is the way forward for Team India? It's a simple question. Does a lot need to change? Does little need to change? Mahila, let's start with you.
I don't think there's a lot needs to change. I think, India still has the skills and the players who was part of this T20 World Cup. Yes, but there are certain areas that India will have to look at. One factor that we discussed throughout the competition was the effectiveness of a wrist spinner in the lineup, where you can create opportunities in the middle, a wicket-taking option. That's something that India did not have, and then that crucial all-rounder, whether it's number 6 or one of the guys in the top 6, can be able to bowl that 2 or 3 overs going forward.
Ajit Agarkar, let's assume everyone was fit and available, and if you had to pick the next T20 World Cup squad, let's think of the players that you think now need a break and the players that certainly India must invest in, looking at the next World Cup.
The one thing India should certainly do, in my opinion, is identify what sort of players you need to for that World Cup in Australia, because the conditions are, I think there were a few spinners which were picked because of the conditions in the UAE. The one thing I hope they don't do is, as much as you want to give IPL importance, and it's a big tournament, it's a very competitive tournament, you also want to see how they go in international, T20s. I think that's important as well. The one thing I certainly do, the thing that India needs to look at is some sort of depth in their seam bowling or fast bowling reserves. Just in case Jasprit Bumrah isn't fit, you don't quite know in 12-13 months where Shami will be with the amount of cricket that there is. Who are your next go-to guys? What are the guys that you need in Australia? The seamers, you've got to start zeroing on. There are a few names. Obviously, Siraj has been picked. There's Deepak Chahar around who does well with the new ball. Try and get Bhuvi up to speed, perhaps. Those sorts of things India need to look at. But in terms of what the personnel will be, it's just so early.
Okay, Tom, after what you've seen, now we have discussed that some tactical calls did cost them dearly. More so the game against New Zealand, the top of the order. How do you address those sorts of issues?
Number one, there needs to be clear role clarity within that side to where people are going to play and how they're expected to play. I think I agree with that, Ajit, in that India need to build the strength of the depth of their pace bowling. They need to identify some genuine pace, and ideally they need to identify a left arm option to create that point of difference. I think that is important. And the tactical side of it is do your research on what works in Australia, what type of cricket works, what brand of cricket is required, how do we go about building a brand that is going to suit us to be competitive and dominant in the World Cup in Australia.
Sorry, Ronak, just one more. I think Mahila sort of alluded to a little bit. That get one of your top guys to bowl. I mean, and don't leave it like India left with Hardik Pandya, like what happened with him. Whether he had told them he can't bowl or not, we are not quite sure. But if he had, and with the kind of batting form he was in, and this is just an example, you don't want that going forward. The same thing happening. Be sure of who your fit players are. Otherwise, you are constantly going to have to rejuggle your batting and try and manage your 5 bowlers and hope that they have good days.
For me, I think it's more to do with the scheduling. India has so much cricket coming up. How can India prioritize T20 cricket? How can they make sure that the people they identify for these roles actually play those games and not get rested? Because there's a bubble, there's so much of fatigue, and there's a World Test Championship. So, and also there's a ODI World Cup in 2023. So there's so much to plan for, and every match becomes critical now. So I wanted to just ask the experts if they would be considering 2 separate teams.
I think that'll be the ideal situation, but there are quite a few players in that T20 team for India that play all 3 formats. Really, I mean, you look at Rohit and Rahul at the moment, Virat, Pant,
Bumrah,
there's Bumrah, there's Shami. So there are quite a few guys who play all 3 formats. So it might be necessary.
Ravi Shastri pointed it out in his last press conference that he was saying we have so many all-format players, and that does cause bubble fatigue. Workload management is an issue. But then, how do you have those conversations? How would you, Ajit, go to a Virat Kohli, say, hey, maybe focus on tests and ODIs for your own good, so that you can take a break in T20s, but that might mean not being part of the next World Cup. Can you have that conversation?
Virat in particular, I don't know. I mean, you can, but with a World Cup around the corner, and if he's good enough to play in your team, I don't know why you would want to have that conversation. Because if he is going to be one of your key players, why would you want to tell him that don't play T20 cricket and just play Test cricket and one-day cricket? How they manage the fatigue is then eventually up to the team, and they've given breaks. Hopefully they'll get regular breaks. Perhaps rest them from one-day cricket if at all, because the one-day World Cups a couple of years down the line. But there's the immediate one is the T20 World Cup. So you got to look at that.
Let's try and pick one player each, shall we? Who we'd like to see get a long run just in this T20 format.
The important thing for India is that you need to make a decision who's your top three is going to be. So you need to make a call, like whether it's Rohit and who's your partner. If it's KL who gets a longer run in that position. If it's Ishan who makes a longer run in that position. Or you need to make that call, and that's very important.
All right, Wasim Akram did say that too, that you need a few personnel changes. Let's see. You can even pick someone from the existing squad, Tom, if you'd like, and say, yeah, this is one guy you do not want to see out of the picture.
I think Surya Kumar Yadav would be one that I think needs to play every single white ball game. And I also would prescribe to, certainly for the next 6 months, just say to someone like Virat Kohli, look, you're certainly in our World Cup plans, but I don't see there any point you playing T20 cricket over the next 6 months. We want to rotate a few players through our T20 program. We want to give a couple of players some real exposure. And then when we're 6 months out prior to the World Cup, we'll look to settle on our set combination. That to me is an option to consider. Have that conversation with him. He might be adamant that he desperately wants to play, and that conversation needs to be had. Umran Malik, I think, there's not too many people that can bowl 150 miles an hour in India, let alone in the world. And I would be very careful with managing him through the T20 program.
Ajit?
Yeah, I think I was going to say Surya Kumar Yadav. I think he needs to play consistently because he's such a versatile player. Not just, Ishan Kishan, perhaps you could argue, he prefers batting at the top. Surya Kumar Yadav has got the ability to actually be flexible anywhere in that order. So the more he plays, the better it is going to be for India. Siraj, I think Siraj is another guy that they could perhaps persist with. Those two guys, India would be certainly well to give them as many opportunities going forward.
Sticking with the pace bowling theme, I'd say someone like T. Natarajan, it would be worth giving him a run, considering he's a left-armer. He can bowl, Yorkers sort of at will. He was a part of the T20 setup till he got injured. So yeah, he could be somebody who returns and has a bit of a run in the team.
For me, who's that spin bowling all-rounder or batting all-rounder? Who's that bowling all-rounder? Those two spots, number 6, number 7, or number 8 also for that matter. Who are those people? Whoever you identify, make sure that they play all the games.
Everyone has a job to do. Maila has to work on that Indian all-rounder, and Surya Kumar Yadav, assuming he retains him for 2 months. Tom Moody's got to handle the left-arm options that India have, as well as Umran Malik. So Tom, you have to do your job for India's mission in 2022. And Ajit Agarkar, I don't know if Rahul Dravid is going to call you up to have that tough conversation with Virat Kohli that Tom's just alluded to. So maybe that is what Rohit and Rahul need to do.
Yeah, fortunately Rahul's there, so it's a good thing.
And on that note, we wrap up this edition of Run Order. Great fun, plenty to ponder for Indian cricket and the new leadership with Rohit Sharma in the shorter format along with Rahul Dravid. So we'll see how the next few months go. Be sure that Tom, Maila and Ajit will be around. Dustin and GS anyway will, so will I. No one else hires us. So we will have this chat in a few months again on ESPN Cricket for Run Order.